Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. We are here today. Again, I am joined by our my brothers and the family of Connect Africa, Kwame Gonza and Dr. Binyam Misgun, to discuss. We have two topics to discuss today. One is the response given to the accusation by the U.S. government regarding human rights of Ethiopia and Eritrea, and we focus on the response given by these two governments. It's rather a strong response. And then the other one is regarding, the geopolitics shifting, the reshaping in the world, and where are we as an African, or where is Africa in all this? So those are the 2 points. Welcome, my brothers, again.
Oh, thank you very much, Malet. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Marlet.
having
Thanks for
us.
having us.
It's indeed a pleasure to have you here. Yeah, so let's kick it with Kwame as the first question regarding, those responses given by the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government to the accusation of human rights, which is completely a one-sided report right after Blinken left the region. So, what is your view? How do you analyze that? I'm rather more interested, those kind of strong. It's not the first time that the Ethiopian government or the Eritrean government giving this. Where does it come from? And, what other countries can learn from this, by standing on your to be resistant and not to accept everything what is coming from the US. Yeah, back to you, Kwame.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Malet. And once again, thank you, my brother Biniam, for being present also. I think it is very important while we are talking about this statement, which I want to share. Let me see if I can have a copy of it. Okay. Let me see. Okay. All right. Mallet, can you access it? Can you see it and try
Uh,
to share it?
I think yes.
Okay. Sorry. Let me go back a little bit. All right. Can you see the statement?
We do see the statement. I'm not sure how big they are, but yeah, we do see the statement. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'll do is that
You might need to read it
I
where
will
you want to highlight.
I will try and zoom it. I will try and zoom it. Can you see it?
But with the same size, it's not zoomed in. It's
Okay.
the same.
Okay. Okay. So no, let me see. Stop screen. Let me just speak it one more time. Let me just speak it one more time.
Okay, it's fine.
Um, how is that? Um,
Let me add it. Hmm.
okay. Is that better? Anyway, I'll try and read it
Yeah.
either way. Yes. So I'll try and go ahead and read it for other people to hear. So basically, this is a statement which the government in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia, came out to give in response to the accusation of the United States, which accusations came out through a report in which the United States was detailing the what it called the atrocities which were committed in Ethiopia during the last 3 years, ever since there was rebels in the northern part of Tigray who wanted to overthrow the government, and these rebels were of course, sponsored by the United States, and they were encouraged in their activities by the United States. And we are not going to go in detail of what happened for the last 3 years. So this statement came out in accusation of Ethiopia and Eritrea, pinning them as the sole group of people who have been responsible for the atrocities, the various atrocities, as the United States called it, that were committed in the northern part of Eritrea during all this period of the war. Even though we know that the TPLF, by then, the TPLF army is the one which initiated the attacks on the northern command of the federal, the federal army of Ethiopia. So the United States came out to give a pinning statement. But this statement, which the United States came out to give, actually, by the time it came, the government in Addis Ababa, is already, even as we speak today, is already in the process of reconciling and rehabilitating the people in the region, and reintegrating even the so-called rebels, within the country. So this statement, Ethiopia came out to respond to that sort of unfounded, and Ethiopia actually used a language which I would say was strong and timely. I think the language was timely, and I can confidently say that it was called for, because the Secretary of State of the United States was just leaving, Ethiopia. So in Ethiopia, they thought that he had come to mend relations with the government. But immediately when he left, then they issue this report, which is in fact attacking Ethiopia, and attacking also not only Ethiopia, but also Eritrea in this case. So Ethiopia came out immediately to try to defend itself from these accusations. So there is a lot of things which I would throw about, which I will throw in for us to understand why Ethiopia had to come, had to come out this way. But let us first read, the letter itself, and then we will go on and try to dissect it and break it down to see the feeling of Ethiopia about the behavior of the United States ever since this conflict started, even since the last 3 years, from 2020 when it broke out. So here is the statement. It reads that the United States State Department has issued a statement determining that certain grave crimes were committed during the conflict in northern Ethiopia. Considering the report of the joint investigation by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, this statement does not contain new findings. So this is, what Ethiopia is saying, that the statement which was issued by the United States Department of State, because this is Blinken, this is Senator Blinken. I mean, this is Secretary Blinken, because the statement was issued by the United States Department of State, which Blinken leads. So it goes on to show you that he probably did not achieve some of the objectives for which he came when he was leaving the United States and reached Ethiopia. So immediately, he left Ethiopia. Then they issued this statement to try to intimidate Ethiopia, because he has failed to achieve some of those objectives. So Ethiopia is saying that there's no new findings actually in this, you
Mhm.
know, there's no really new findings in this, statement that has been issued, because the findings have already been included in the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, findings, investigations, and even the UN office, the United Nations, High Commission of Human Rights, the statement, the statements which were issued, the findings which were issued by these two organizations, you know, uh, 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 the original findings actually, that the United States Department is not bringing anything new. So the government goes on to say that the government in Ethiopia does not accept the blanket condemnations contained in the statement and does not see any value in such unilateral and advanced, adversarial, approach. So what the Ethiopian government goes on to say is that it doesn't accept the accusations against Ethiopia and even against Eritrea, because these are interfering in the first place. They are interfering in how Ethiopia is conducting this issue. In the first place, you see that the African Union is the one which led this peace agreement, the Pretoria Agreement. The United States was not part of this. So I think that this is why, the government had to come out strong and say, these statements are unilateral in nature, because you don't belong here. You don't have, you are not part and parcel of this, settlement and this agreement. And I think this is the feeling which we are witnessing. The statement is selective. Actually, they highlighted this word. There's a couple of words which they chose out and they highlighted, and they say the statement is selective
Mhm.
as it unfairly. So they highlighted the word selective.
Mhm.
The statement is selective as it unfairly apportions blame among different parties in the conflict for no apparent reason. The statement appears to exonerate one party from certain allegations of human rights violations, you know such as rape and other forms of sexual violence, despite the clear and overwhelming evidence, you know, about its culpability. So the report, the statement which was issued by the United States Department of State, try to exonerate the one side, and here the federal government in Addis Ababa did not want to mention TPLF, mention Eritrea. So he said that TPLF has been exonerated, of sexual violence, whatever they did, you know, uh, uh, but Ethiopia did not take it at heart. But this is what the United States, is trying to do, and Ethiopia called this selective. This is selective, which means it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the United Nations, Commission on Human Rights has already, implicated this group, that these people, they committed, atrocities, including rape and all kind of things which we would not want to repeat again. So they go on to say that the statement is untimely. You see, so the government goes on to say that the statement is untimely, and they highlighted the word untimely. It is coming shortly after the launching of national consultations on options for a transitional justice policy. One of the pillars of transitional justice policy is accountability. So, so it's sort of like the United States Department of State in its statement wanted to teach Ethiopia. And now here, the Ethiopian Minister of Foreign Affairs comes out and says the statement you are giving is untimely, is late, because the thing you are talking about, we have already started the process on them. We have already started on the process of transitional justice. We have already a policy of transitional justice. Okay, and it even starts to to lecture the United States Department and says one of the pillars of transitional justice policy is accountability. This this foresees that there will be further investigations into the allegations of all kinds of crimes, that the statement alleges. These investigations will consolidate those undertaken by the Interministerial Task Force implementing the recommendations of the Ethiopia Human Rights Commission and also the United Nations Office of the High Commission for human rights, joint investigations. So Ethiopia is saying already the investigations were carried out, and we are implementing this policy of transitional justice, you know, trying to address the findings of the reports that were trying to address the findings and investigations of the Ethiopia Human Rights Commission investigations. So it called this. So it went on to say that it thus prejudices these national efforts. So it prejudices the national effort, these national efforts being carried out, by the Ethiopian government, and whose efforts, were, are based on through investigation. You see, so it prejudices these national efforts, to thoroughly investigate allegations, allegations of whoever is the culprit. So the United States statement is inflammatory. So he went on also to highlight the word inflammatory. So if you go back at the beginning, you can see that he highlighted the word selective,
Mm-hmm.
anti-inflammatory. You see, so the US statement is inflammatory. Whatever the intention of the United States Department, this statement will be used to advance highly polarized campaign pitting one community against others in the country. So he said that this partisan and divisive approach from the United States is ill-advised. You see, is ill-advised. As Ethiopia is implementing the peace agreement, such apportioning of blame is unwarranted and undercuts the support of the United States for an inclusive peace process in Ethiopia. The visit of the United States Secretary of State gave hope that the two countries are poised to amend their bilateral relations. The government of Ethiopia hopes that despite the US's statement, the frank discussions held and understanding reached during the Secretary of State's visit to Ethiopia will help restore the strategic relations between Ethiopia and the United States. The government of Ethiopia will continue implementing all measures of accountability, including finalizing the nationwide consultation on transitional justice and ensuring that justice is done for all victims. Friends of Ethiopia are welcome to constructively support this process. Yeah, so that is how far I would go to read. But to break it down for me, I see that the statement itself is timely and is firm as it should be, because I believe that the Ethiopian government has been patient in this journey. It has been really patient with the United States, and even to allow the Secretary of State to come to Ethiopia, you know, uh, uh, that was a very powerful gesture. It shows someone who's really very accommodating. After all, the things which the United States has done, after all the attack which the United States has been engaged in, trying to overthrow the government in Ethiopia. I mean, it is really a very good gesture by the government in Ethiopia. So we sense that the government is trying to be very firm and point out to the United States that the approach of the United States is very outdated, because the process of transitional justice has already started in Ethiopia, and this process the United States was not part of it. This process was led by the African Union.
Mm-hmm.
So the government is saying that you have no right, to come in and claim, and make all these claims when the process has started long ago, as it has already mentioned. The Ethiopian, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN Office of, Human Rights, that it is all, both of these are the thing, are the investigation, the findings of these investigations are the ones which Ethiopia is working with. So I think this language is for me is timely, as well as is a lesson for us as Africans. I think to be very firm when we are handling people like these who have decided to be bullies. In many cases, the United States has decided to be a bully all across, that it can come whenever it wants to get, by force, blackmail, and intimidation.
Uh, are you there, Kwame? Yeah, it looks like it has a connection problem, but I think he made his point. Yeah, thank you for that. He will join us back, I'm sure. Um, yeah, so that is as far as dissecting the response written by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Ethiopian government to the US allegation or accusation. Now, coming back to Brother Biniam, also, Eritrea has responded actually in a manner where it seems that they kind of complement each other, those letters, both the Eritrean and the Ethiopian government. And I like how they both mention each other. And yeah, it really, it made me feel something as I read it. So, what is how do you analyze it? I'm sure this is not, I mean, it's also written in the letter. Such accusation are not new for Eritrea. You have been doing it. There is this sense of that, telling the US you have been doing this since 2009 against
Yeah.
Eritrea. The blackmailing and the intimidation of these both countries because of the war, and also it reminds, it's not also mentioning those two countries, that you see the unity of two countries, but also uh, Eritrea is telling the US in like to stop this ill-advised approach. I mean, yeah, there are all these things. It's just a highlight for me from what I read. But I want to ask you. So yeah, first of all, how do you analyze it? And then secondly, does it do any good actually for the African leaders? I mean, to be strong while they talk, when they articulate, or when they write a response. What good will bring us, to stand on our feet and say what we don't accept, we don't accept? I mean, what is the lesson to take from this, or does it bring any good for the country
Mhm.
actually? Because US will continue as long as we are not that economic powerful. Yeah, back to you.
Thanks, Marlet. Yeah, Kwame did a really good job with the statement released by Ethiopian Foreign Ministry. I already mentioned some of the issues raised by Eritrean Foreign Ministry as well. They complement each other in a number of ways. The only difference is that Ethiopia still is keen to maintain its relationship with the US, and Eritrea doesn't care at all at this stage. Yeah, you could see it. But Ethiopia mentioned, which Kwame also raised, but it need to be accentuated a bit. It is an adversarial, unilateral and adversarial. Yeah, this is not only inflammatory; it's an adversarial. You only expect from your this kind of accusation from your adversaries. And Eritrea side, it's about blackmailing and intimidating Ethiopia and Eritrea, and propping up TPLF. That's what this is meant to do. And then, of course, it is also to find a way to perpetuate this chaos, and eventually to find a way to intervene. Yeah, force yourself into it, yeah, meddle in this process, and in the hope that you would extract some geopolitical gains. And it is within that context that Eritrea phrased it a little bit more aggressively than the Ethiopian government. Yeah, still there's hope, and it said in the statement there was hope that they would, relationship would be made. But Eritrea said, that this is it. You're not learning anything. No lesson is learned from all those years of inflicting pain and creating discord and chaos in the region. It hasn't helped. Propping up TPLF is not going to gain you any geopolitical benefits. And if you continue to go that path, you're going to create more chaos. So being able to speak out is very important. But speaking out just for sake of speaking out is not also good. Yeah, we need to understand, why is the US doing this? It is behaving like a judge. Remember the word determined. It means ruled. It means decided. So they had acted as a jury and a judge, literally. They
Mhm.
decided, and not now forcing Ethiopia to disband all local institutions and initiatives and hand it over to the US. Yeah, basically that's what they are asking, and it's not attainable arrangements. Yeah, and in attempt to do that, in attempt to prop up TPLF, salvage TPLF, and of course it goes. People think that it's because they love TPLF. No, that's not the agenda. The agenda is not because they care about human rights. It's not because they care about those atrocities that they claim that has taken place in the course of this conflict. It is simply because it facilitates their intervention in this region, their intervention in our internal affairs. Intervening in our meddling in our internal affairs meant that then they can shape, reconfigure, politics to serve own interests. That's basically what they are trying to do. Blackmailing to get something out of it. Remember, they were intimidating us with the word genocide.
Mhm.
Remember that they call the genocidal war. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're doing the same thing in Ukraine. They're telling us now Ukraine is a genocidal war, Putin's genocidal war. Remember, it was Abiy and Isaias's genocidal war.
Mhm.
So the narratives are more or less the same. What are they doing with this? It's a propaganda, then you malign them and eventually extract something out of them. And remember, once they have instituted this mandate at the UN Human Rights Council, it just sits as an albatross. It never goes away. They continue to renew them. Yeah. And obviously, Ethiopia was very aggressive in trying to get this mandate being disbanded and dismissed. But I think somehow there was some negotiation with the UN, I mean the EU, the hope that they won't be embarrassed. I think the Reuters article mentioned something along that line, and they told Ethiopia that this is going to be its last term, and Ethiopia wanted the report not to be read. That means it won't be registered, whatever report that they're coming up with. But then now they would have that report. But then that report would be used as a propaganda tool for the Europeans and the Americans to somehow intimidate, malign, extract something, political gains, I don't know, geopolitical gains out of it. And then it is very important to frame this. Whatever they're doing, it is within the context of the geopolitical competition that they see as coming from China. That rivalry. It is within that context that they're trying to push those issues as a big deal, and want to use that as a carrot, as a form of weaponizing it in order to somehow intimidate, push us, pit us against each other at times, and cause discord and chaos, and eventually that would allow them to made it into our own affairs, and that's ultimately what it is. And then the Eritrean government is very blunt. It just puts it, you were this aggressive since 2009. You did this, you did that, and you dismissed TPLF's use of child soldiers. In fact, remember in their newspapers, and I would say
Mhm.
the Western propaganda tools, they were lionizing children, child
Exactly.
soldiers.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we do remember. Yeah.
And if Ethiopian government or Eritrean government had done that,
Wow.
you would know the kind of backlash there would have been, a media campaign against it. Yeah, but obviously for TPLF it is nothing. And of course, it must be underlined: we care about human rights. We concerned about each other's well-being. We see each other as brothers, and nobody, I've never seen anybody talking about the Tigrayans must be this, we will have to, people in that region care about each other. Yeah. Of course, there are discords that they have created, the tensions, they've fissures, they're trying to expand them, instead of we trying to close the gap, and then what they're trying to do is to pull us apart.
Yeah.
Remember, the more narrative is established about, Eritrea did this to you, Ethiopia did this to you, yeah, Ethiopian soldiers did this to you, then you're perpetuating that tension and conflict, hatred. It's not about mending fences. It's not about creating peace. And what the Ethiopian government is talking about is let's create transitional justice. Is all about, let's recognize the whatever mishaps that took place, whatever crimes committed, allegation, let's investigate them, recognize who's the victim and who's the victimizer, and then try to find a way to create accountability and move forward in a healing fashion. Yeah, that's what transnational justice is all about. Yeah, in order to heal, the wounds. Yeah, there are wounds. Obviously, this is war. This is devastating war. Yeah, and it was one of the most brutally fought war, if I have to add, in the modern African warfare, and that is not registered that effectively. And within that, I'm sure you would find some crimes here and there, and I may not be in the way that was exaggerated in a fashion that the Americans are trying to relate to us, or some of the TPLF cadres are trying to tell us. But obviously, there are crimes committed. There will be crimes committed, and those had to be investigated. And whoever the party has done this would have to be accounted for. Yeah, but not this, lousy stories that they have been telling us. 120,000 women being raped. It's just nonsense. Yeah, it's just even some of the political leaders, Tigray political leaders that were there as a transnational leader, government of Tigray, the previous one, not this one. They were very concerned, and then they went and investigated, and they told us in a number of interviews that this was a true story. Yeah, there were so many lies around this. They dismissed it, and this is meant to just propagandize this in order to bring in as much troops as possible. Recruitment tool, and the more you throw in hateful stuff, yeah, the more angry the youth become, and the more they will be mobilized into joining them. Yeah, that was the strategy, and now they've been overstretched and used it as a major propaganda tool. And I think that has to be underscored. But we still care about everyone, and I think Eritrean government cares about the conditions under which the people of Tigray is living, and people of Amhara, people of Afar, and even the broader Ethiopia, broader region, needed to be needs to move forward
Mhm.
into building our future, and hopefully for the better.
Mm.
Kwame is, yes, he's back. Welcome
Thank
back.
you. Uh, Thank
Sorry,
you
sorry,
very
guys.
much.
My network was having a little bit of problem, but I'm back.
No, it's good. He was also he was not in the stream, but I think for part of it he has listened what you have
Mm,
said. But really, yeah, thank you very much, brother Biniam, for that. For me, the highlight was that Ethiopia is keen to mend the relationship with the US, whereas Eritrea doesn't care to mend the relationship with the US. Other than that, yes, the laters do complement each other. Yeah,
mm,
that's indeed a difference, a big difference. Exactly. I mean, that's a whole other topic, a whole other show. It can be
mm,
how things went, but. And then another highlight is, at the end of the, I really want to read this. At the end of the letter, the Eritrean government said, uh, the people of Ethiopia and the region I mean, no, the US, I think, has no moral. The US has no moral or legal right to act as a prosecutor or a judge in these matters. That
mm,
was, yeah, that's
Yeah,
was.
I think. I think actually to comment on why Ethiopia has to mend relations is because of the position in which Ethiopia is as the host of the headquarters of the African Union. I think that could be one of the reasons. Of course, there may be other reasons, but that is part of the reason. Ethiopia is hosting is the administrative capital of the African continent. So it feels obliged, I think, sort of to temper down a little bit on its anger and be accommodative a little bit, which is unlike, Eritrea. So Eritrea just feels like we have to show the bully that, he doesn't belong here. Okay,
mm,
outright, we have to push out the bully to get out of this place. Yeah,
mm,
so I think that could explain also the behavior of Ethiopia. But I think that it is also a strategic move. Like I said, it teaches us, as Ethiopia is doing a lot of things which are teaching other African countries how to behave, and how to respond when attacked by these imperialists. Because you can see that uh, in some way uh, uh, Ethiopia has sort of taken control over the whole of the East African region and even the Horn of Africa. Uh, like if you remember, as we have been analyzing in the past, these things when they started, these conflicts when they started, the Prime Minister Abiy was in the region, garnering up support, gathering all the support of the region, even way back, starting with the issue of the goddamn when Egypt was misbehaving in the region also. That the prime minister was in the region. He was not in the United Nations. He was in the region. So
mm,
empowering. And actually what he has done, it has empowered even the African Union itself, because this
mm,
is someone who has believed so much in the African Union. So I think that is credit. That is Ethiopia's credit, that the African Union has been empowered, to be able to do what it has not been doing, what it's supposed to do. And we see that African Union has even transferred this same attitude and approach, to Democratic Republic of Congo, as you are seeing that now they are trying to settle the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo between Congo and Rwanda. Okay, so the African Union is greatly right now involved in this situation. So it's a great, I think it is a great lesson that we, learning on how Ethiopia has approached this situation. There's need for us to continue to be firm as Africans, and there's need for us to work together, because without working together, these guys will swallow us. We
mm,
cannot afford to isolate us, to isolate ourselves. And I can see that President Afaki also, I mean, recently he called, President Ruto, he invited him to Ethiopia, and they were moving through the streets. So I think there's need for us to continue to come together, as we have seen that the imperialists themselves have become weakened, as it has been rightly mentioned, even in the statement by Eritrea, the statement which Eritrea issued. It mentioned that this declining hegemony, so
mm,
when you are talking about this declining hegemony, it is then important for us as Africans to recognize that it is time for us to come together, especially the progressive, forces on the continent. And I can see that, of course, Ethiopia and Eritrea have gone in this direction, but there's need to pull the others on board. People who have been suffering on this continent for a very long
mm,
time. For example, Zimbabwe. There's a need for Ethiopia and Eritrea to work closely with Zimbabwe, work closely with Mali, with Mali, who has just thrown off French colonialism, work closely
mm,
with Burkina Faso. So this is the direction I think I would like to see more. And I've seen Prime Minister Abiy going to, Algeria, trying to, to create those links and those strong, relations. So it is important that we continue to work together. That's the only way I think that we can defeat the bully, as we have seen in the region right now. The United States is isolated in the region. When you look at the Horn of Africa, you look at the whole of East Africa, is isolated because it's unwanted, or in the region, and it's just trying to push, itself in the region, to force itself. So in some cases, you can see that it has become a nagging, sort of a nagging partner, or you can say nagging partner. You see, and
mm,
I think that because Ethiopia is seeing this also, that the United States is unwanted in the region. That is where you see that Ethiopia also gets this confidence to issue that a strong, such a strong, statement, because it knows that the United States will not run to Uganda and get support. There's no
mm,
support. It will not run to Kenya or Rwanda, and get support. It will not run anyway. It will not go to Eritrea and get any support around this region. There's no support for the United States. Everyone is, I think Africans are trying to take care of themselves, their affairs. The only thing I see that we are missing is to complete the circle. We have to complete the circle by, working together, tightly, to hold our hands together. I think that way we'll be even able to push the United States out of the continent.
Okay.
yeah. Can I respond,
Yes.
add
Yeah.
to what you had already said? The Eritrean position, I think, was after trying to maintain relation with the US for a very long time. Eritrea had been uh, avoiding being, with this camp or with that camp. Let's work together, yeah. And it had tried with the US several times. It's just given up, yeah. They say that those guys are not rehabilitated. There's no possibility of rehabilitating, American foreign policy. Yeah, it's as brutal as it has ever been, and just dismissing it from that perspective. That's where they are. And obviously, Ethiopia hasn't given hope. Yeah, there's a possibility of not only a detente but also a stronger relationship, and a similar fashion that Ethiopia had been working with the Chinese as well as with the US, comfortably for a very long time. So it wants to be able to do that. Yeah. But the US, I'm not sure if it is in that position. It's just wanting to jolt, anything out of everybody in order to remain hegemonic state. And remember, he issued this just days after he left Ethiopia,
Yeah.
and a very adversarial
Yes,
statement.
absolutely.
It was, he started to behave like a judge. Now, I decide, you don't. Yeah? I am the judge, and I tell you what you should do. Yeah. And then, of course, it's also throwing a wedge between the different parties. Yeah. And particularly between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And I was hoping that there will be cracks between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And it's forcing Ethiopia either to say that Eritrea had committed and therefore should be investigated, or somehow create some tension between those two states. And then, of course, TPLF just going increasingly into becoming ever more dependent on central government. They haven't liked that, so you throw a spanner in that process as well. So all that is carefully designed, yeah, to continue this difficulty, this chaos, and then in that they will be able to find a particular way of extracting certain advantages, which they think that they will be able to. That's what it is. This whole thing is all about, yeah. And ultimately, it is they perceiving everything through this prism of their competition with the Chinese, and that's also very problematic. And they're making us feel that we don't care about human rights. That's what they're telling us. Our institutions are incapable of handling those issues. I mean, transnational justice, as if we don't care about our brethren and sisters, yeah, in different parts of the region. We do, and that has to be called out. Yeah, you are far enough coming
Yes.
from elsewhere, telling us that we don't care about each other, and you think you care more about ourselves than it just doesn't add up. So it has to be called out, and I think both governments has managed to do that effectively. And of course, the ping pong. You could. I don't know if they had sat and discussed, and I would say this and you say that. I don't think they have gone that route, but it looked like it is a ping pong somehow. You could see it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Binyam, for that. And also, yeah, Brother Kwame, it was a good reflection. Now, moving to our second topic or second agenda as we see it, as it is unfolding in front of our eyes, the world, the geopolitics of the world is reshaping, and we have seen some big changes that we would not expect, I don't know, in some few decades. What China has done with making peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and then now the China, the African countries, most of them, I don't think if I can say supporting Russia, but not supporting for what US has called, to for the African leaders to do, refusing to do that and choosing what is best for them. Now, what ignited this topic is actually recently the president of China has visited, he has been in Moscow, and he said that a new world has been made, and we would have not thought this, in 100 years. So, and he claimed that we, meaning them, China and Russia, are leading that. Now, that is for China and Russia, but of course, it impacts Africa. And where is Africa in all this? I mean, there are some countries that support, that work with China and at the same time with the West. And there are some countries who work with Russia and at the same time with the US. But where are we in all this? What's your view? Not specifically Russia versus China, but in all these geopolitical changes. And what should Africa do? How can it be beneficiary out of this? Uh, who would like to go first? Okay, as we started, maybe Kwame, would you like to go first?
Okay, Malik. Thank you very much. Sorry, I wanted to say something on one more thing in addition to what my brother Biniam was mentioning regarding Blinken's visit and Ethiopia's response. Before I come to the topic that you have just introduced. I don't know about you guys, but I sense uh, desperation in the approach of the United States. I sense that they are desperate to the extent that they are looking for partners across the continent, but those partners are not forthcoming, as we have seen in South Africa. And then they tried to see that they mend things with Ethiopia. That is why Blinken came to visit, and but in the visit itself, Ethiopia still stood in the same position, that it refused to change its position, and hence, of course, the threat with the statement. When you go to the western part of the continent, apart from, maybe you can talk of Ghana, is right now their friend, and Ghana and Nigeria, but majority of the other countries which were, once colonized by French, majority of them are also very hostile, towards the United States. And even right now, we are having the Vice President Kamala Harris, in Ghana, but you can still see, even in Ghana itself, you can see that tension, you can see that desperation within the United States diplomats, when they are, moving across the continent. They are looking for where, to hold. They are looking for partners on the continent, but those partners look that they are not. The partners are not forth coming. Sorry for sending you back to that, but I don't know what you guys think about this situation. Of how they are, frequenting, of course, the continent.
Mm, mm.
Mallet.
Yeah. So no, okay. I mean, you added. Um, there's. Are you
Do you
asking
read?
this?
Yeah, yeah. So what I was asking, do you read anything in the behavior of the United States, and its approach on the continent, how it has been moving around? Because now we have Blinken has just left, Kamala Harris, she's coming in, but you see that the partners are very few on the continent. So do you read anything else in that behavior? Even the fact that they wanted to reach out to Ethiopia, but even Ethiopia refused, these advances. Uh,
Yeah,
this behavior of the United States, do you read something out of it,
yeah,
going forward? And then, of course, it ties in, even uh, it ties within also the events that are happening between Russia and
Yeah.
China.
yeah,
Yes, so that is what I just wanted to throw in there, to hear your views on what you
mm,
think of
Oh,
the behavior of the United States, and of course the whole Western world across the
yeah.
continent.
I think that
Bilam,
that's
you
a
can
very,
come in. Yeah.
yeah, a very excellent observation, and indeed, it's a sign of anxiety. Yeah, that they have been feeling, that China had taken over Africa, and the ways in which China has taken over Africa is in a mutually beneficial arrangement. Yeah, with all its flaws. Yeah, and they have not been able to match that up. Yeah, other than just bullying, you have to do this, you have to let this company in, you have to change your policy to this, to that. They have not been forthcoming with anything substantive. Yeah, and of course, the only thing that they had come up with is probably some peanuts that they give us. Yeah, the what they call aid. Ethiopia was talking about $20 billion that it needs to reconstruct the country, and what Blinken just commented was what 300 million. It's
Yeah.
peanuts, literally, and then over a long period of time. Even the $200 billion that they committed for African continent, it was a useless one by comparison to the Chinese. The Chinese have invested over $1 trillion,
Mhm.
and over a 15 years period. Yeah, and then much of it is, and at a bilateral basis. Yeah, and a direct investment from Chinese companies and Chinese state banks, and given us a loan, and it's an infrastructure development. And I remember just a couple of days ago, one of the CIA, former CIA guy, Cameron Hudson, I think his name, if I'm not mistaken, he was in an interview on the CNN. He was talking about America is not in the infrastructure development business. So what is America in? Oh, giving scholarship, education, healthcare, what have you. But then even that, they're not doing a very good job. And we have to understand that even in that area, they're not investing other than HIV/AIDS research and some malaria research that it comes through USAID and in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're not getting much from the US, even in that area. Even the other day, they released a strategy for Eritrea, and they said they are now being overwhelmed by the Chinese investment in Eritrea and education. They're giving scholarship to youth, the Eritrean youth, and America is not competing with that. They're admitting that they are behind. But you could see this constant anxiety that, there are influences fast disappearing in this continent. And why is that kind of anxiety? There are a few things we have to recognize Africa has. Yeah, it's a one, it's resource. It's very important minerals that we have. Two, the land, very important. Food is going to be very much crucial. And three, we have population. We're going to be the biggest markets, while every other developed state is going to have a population decline. We are still on the rise, the young population. So it's projected for the next 30, 50 years, we are going to increase significantly. Yeah. And all that is just going to create this shift in geopolitics as well. And the fourth element is depending on which area we're talking about the geopolitical importance. And Horn of Africa and the Red Sea area, all the way to Kenya and Tanzania, what you have is a power projection into the Indian Ocean and controlling the Red Sea. So that region is very important unless you have control over it. That's why Somalia is very important. That's why America is bitter that Eritrea has not allowed its military to move into Eritrea, yeah, to control it. Now, will they force every other state to kick out the Chinese? Impossible to do. Many of those countries have been taking money from the Chinese, borrowed money, big infrastructure. They are used to being treated like partners. Can America come with that kind of arrangement is the biggest question. Have they been able to do that? With the kind of economic crisis that they have at their hand, I don't think they will be able to do that. And therefore, that's the kind of anxiety. So the emphasis that they put on is value, we share value, common value. What is that value that we share in common with the US? What is their military doing here in our backyards everywhere and trying to make a peer-to-peer? I don't know if you guys know, they have something called peer-to-peer relationship with the military. So a colonel from America would have a relationship with a colonel from Ghana or other African country, yeah, and a general to general. What is that meant to do? To subvert that civilian decisions that are being made. And if the civilians are not subversive to American interests, then they would overthrow the government or put pressure on the civilian government. That's what they've been doing, training. So what they're offering as militarization, what the Chinese are offering as economic advancement, hope. That's very important. They're offering us hope for a better future. Whether it works or not, it's yet to be seen, right? But at least for what we're seeing is they're offering us hope. Let's work together as partners. Good or bad, ill intention or not, that's something to be determined. But what we're seeing here so far is exactly that. And they are unable to extricate Africans from away from the Chinese. Winning Africans away from Chinese would require having to put on the table what China has been putting on the table. So Blinken was asked 20 billion. Yeah, Ethiopia said to Blinken, we need this much. I don't think Blinken is going to come up with that kind of money for Ethiopia. So he goes back to, yeah, where he comes from, and he speaks this kind of hateful and antagonistic statement. That's exactly what he did. As far as I'm concerned, And of course, it's going to back to square one, bullying Ethiopia once more, intimidating it, into giving in, continue to be friends, irrespective of that. And what's Ethiopia going to gain by being a friend to America? America would be making demands to do few things: a regime change in Eritrea, kick the Chinese away from Ethiopia, kick the Chinese away from Djibouti. Yeah, will Ethiopia be able to do that? Is it going to serve any good to Ethiopia to do that? I mean, those are the very important questions to us, and that's what South Africa is confronted with. Yeah, what's America offering us? Hardly anything, you know. So it is another challenge. I'm sure Ghana is considering that, especially with this whole idea of wanting to be industrialized nation. Ghana is going to need ever more those technologies that will be transferred. Will America be able to do that? America is already deindustrialized in a massive way. All American companies have moved to China. Yeah. Now China is the powerhouse in that sense. So it's going to be very, very difficult for the US to get Africans to come to this table. But what Africans are asking is, we don't want to be enemies with the US. We want to work with you. We want to work with the Chinese, just as a sovereign nation who are entitled to make foreign policy decisions. We want to trade with you. We want to trade with China. We want to trade with Russia. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. That's what Africans are asking. We're not going to be with China against the US. We're not going to be with the US against China or Russia. We want to work with everybody that works with us. As independent nation, we should have independent foreign policy. And Americans say, no, you are either with us or against us. That's what they are offering us. I think I have said enough. Back to you, Malik.
Thank you, brother Binam. Really, that was a very good one. Yeah, I mean, for me, yes, I do see this desperation. I mean, in 1 year time, how many of their officials have traveled to Africa? I think if we have to do statistics, this is really the highest. And but what is more even interesting is the resistant approach from the African leaders. The more America is trying to impose their policy or bullying Africa, the more resistant the African leaders are. And I wonder, it makes me wonder, is it just talking? That's why before I asked, is it just when they articulate, when they make a speech, or when they write a letter? Does it go beyond that? The way now they are, standing on their feet and telling America for what it is. Does it go beyond words? That's what worries me. Yes, but I do see that desperation from the US, and sometimes even it scares me. Really, what is it that they have seen? What are they going to do? But what's more interesting for me is the way how Africans perceived it and reflecting it. But will that be practical? It's yet to be seen. So that being said, we come back to you. You used this, Kwame, as a bridge, I think, to go to the next topics. You take the floor now. You are muted, I think. Oh, let me see.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, my brother Biniam. Thank you, Mallet, once again. Absolutely. I wanted us to use this as a bridge, going onto what is happening in China. China, of course, has of late become very assertive. I gave a talk a time ago, last year, and in that talk, the war in Ukraine had just actually started. I recorded that talk even on my YouTube channel. I gave it to the Conservatism class. And in that talk, when the war had just started in Ukraine, actually, I mentioned my observations, because I was seeing that the United States, its war in Ukraine, actually, it leads it leads to China. That is where it is, targeting. But that war, it will end up in Africa. So it is just moving through Ukraine towards Russia and then going to China, and then the war will have to end up in Africa. So that is the prediction which I made when I saw the movements of the United States. And lo and behold, these days, I think I was listening to one analyst from the West who actually mentioned it and said that the United States is trying to fight China through Russia, but is passing through Ukraine. You see, so it was mentioned a few days ago. So it was just a confirmation of that. And with Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, it shows you that China is aware of this. China has really understood this. That is why you see that he they have proclaimed to each other, him, President Xi Jinping and President Putin, that this is now China's friendship with Russia is a friendship without any limits. Is a friendship with no limits. So I think what is they are communicating together is that we are going to help each other, even if it is militarily, because the United States a few months ago was trying to intimidate China that they should not give weapons to Russia and this and that and this and that. But we saw that China supplied some rifles actually through the normal rifles, of course, which are they're assault rifles, but they are normal rifles which can be supplied to anyone. But this was a sign that China is willing to supply rifles. It has supplied some drones, even through some normal civilian drones, which have been used even in the war. So we are seeing that China has become more assertive in the region, as we have seen in the Middle East also, is because also China has realized that the West has lost it. It has not only lost it in the Middle East, but even in the region, that they are acting out of desperation. If you go back to how they withdrew from Afghanistan, for example, they were running from Afghanistan to try and run and contain, China. Okay, so but in this running from Afghanistan to try and come and put out a fire, which is sort of blazing in the South China Sea, they have again Russia in Syria, and they have Russia in Mali, and Russia that time already was approaching again Burkina Faso, to try to give help, in Burkina Faso, so that these guys can throw out France. So the Chinese have realized that these guys now, they're acting out of desperate, they're overwhelmed and they're overstretched. And my brother Binyam spoke about, are they willing, for example, the United States, is it willing to give the financial and economic help which China is giving? They are not willing, because the United States itself is in a whole lot of trouble. And these are all, the things which China has noticed. You can see the collapse of the banks, which has happened, a few days ago. And this collapse of banks, Silicon Valley Bank, and then you can see that it has extended even to Europe. Swiss bank, and some people have been even saying that I think the bank in Germany is called what? There's a bank which is collapsing a few hours ago in Germany. So the crisis is all over the Western world, and China has noticed this. So adding that to the that economic crisis that is happening in the West, if you add on it the mistakes which they have made in the Middle East, the mistakes which they have made in Africa itself, that huge mistakes have been made in Africa, on our continent, that they failed to rehabilitate themselves after World War II, as Europeans, as a group, as the West as a group, that the United States had this chance when it was extremely rich, very powerful. It had this chance of rehabilitating the Anglo-Saxon image, that it would have built a good relations with Africa, based on economics and industrialization. But it did not. The United States did not take this opportunity. So their image, they have made so many mistakes, not only in the Middle East where they have bombed and destroyed Somalia in 1993. Recently they even came to destroy Libya in 2011. So they have made these huge mistakes that China now is coming, step by step, trying to clean up their mess. Like they have started with the Middle East, okay? When they started from the Middle East, now they have started settling, the wrangles which the United States has been starting over there. The fight has been starting over there. Now China is trying to put them out. As we have seen, China was able to bring Iran and Saudi Arabia together. And when they withdrew from Afghanistan, for example, China went in immediately to Afghanistan to put in investments, to create good relations. Immediately they pulled out. The Chinese foreign ministry invited the Taliban's actually to Beijing, and they were there. So China is taking over, but slowly, with a lot of understanding, with respect for the people. And so this is what we are seeing, even between Russia and Ukraine, that China now has moved into a higher gear now, trying to settle this conflict, and it's going again to reflect badly on the West. To go back on what my brother mentioned, is the United States willing to give economic, help, or to engage in a relationship that is focused on economics? It is not. Even in Ghana, where the United States still has some support, as you had at the United Nations, is only Ghana which voted with the United States. Even in Ghana itself, when you look at people like the vice president of Kamala Harris, what she brought. I know we will come a few days from now. We will come to analyze what she said in Ghana. But when you read the speeches, when you listen to the speeches which she gave, they're just empty speeches, just rhetorics of democracy. This, you should practice democracy. This, and China is not into that, rhetoric. China is building in Ghana a $3 billion dollar oil refinery called Essential. Is putting up infrastructure, dams, energy systems, gas plants. It has commissioned the gas plant in Ghana. So you can see that China is not in the talking business. China is in the doing business. And the Africans, we are not that stupid also to abandon a partner, to leave a partner who is acting, a partner who is serious. We have a partner who is serious about the relationship. We can't abandon that partner and then go in with someone who is involving himself in rhetorics. And this is actually what all the other parts of the world are noticing. If you go to Saudi Arabia and see how they treated President Xi Jinping when he went there, you compare that with how they treated Biden. You go, now you go to that relationship that they even allow Xi Jinping to come to Ghana to speak to the president of Saudi Arabia.
That's a pity. Hopefully he'll be.
Okay, it comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. My network is breaking off. So you can see that President Xi Jinping and China was welcomed into Saudi Arabia to the extent that the Saudis, who had, huge animosity towards Iran, that they have accepted, to settle this, animosity, to settle their wrangle with Iran, with the President Xi Jinping being at the helm. So I see that the West has continued to make a lot of mistakes, and China, in turn, has continued to capitalize on those mistakes. They are coming with rhetorics, but even in these rhetorics which they are coming with, me myself, I don't blame them. They have a lot of problems. The economics is not good in the United States. The economy is not doing well. Even in Europe, the economies are not doing well. You have seen, you have seen the demonstrations in France. People are demonstrating in the streets of France because the French government doesn't have money. It wants to extend the pension age so that it can still have money to spend on certain things. And the people are saying, you cannot spend our money. Okay, so these are all signs of a stressed economy, in the world. The economic system, the collapse of banks, the homelessness on the streets in Los Angeles and in California. All these are signs of a stressed economy that the United States does not have the economic muscle even to engage and compete with China. And China has realized this. That is why it is playing its hand all over, the Middle East. Now it has entered Europe, and of course in Africa it is very much present. And all of us have welcomed it, whether you are in the Middle East, Russia and stuff. Even Ukraine wants to listen, to China. So I believe that it is an advantage that we should also, as Africans, continue to take advantage of this. But more so, we need to continue these conversations as Africans also, so that our voices can be heard. Because when we are not talking about it, these people sometimes think that we are not aware of what they are doing. But also our presidents, when they don't hear us as citizens, talking about these things, supporting them, in one way or another, they think that we don't care about our continent, we don't care about our countries. So I think it is a good thing that we continue these conversations, but more so we call also on the African leaders, those ones who see where the world is going, where it has shifted, to continue to work together and work, together much more closely, for the benefit, of course, of the continent and all of us. Thank you very much, Malet.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. Yeah, it was very good, definitely. In yes, there is a desperation, but the question is also what are they bringing when they come? It's just talking when you wait versus to Russia or I mean, China or others, we saw the African leaders see much more with China's investment or commitment. So, as a final one, I'm coming back to Brother Binyam. If you can add on this one, how Africa can shoot the lion, or is it a must for Africa to align with this or that one? Do can Africa afford, to play this non-alliance at all, in terms of where we are not even economically powerful? What's your take? You can also give us. You can add as a bonus what you think of Putin coming to South Africa. That's it.
Uh, okay. Well, Putin is very much welcome in South Africa. Very much welcome. And I'm sure there are a few whites who were beneficiaries of the apartheid state would probably see something negative in that, because it was the USSR that had been supporting the ANC while it was waging a struggle against the apartheid system. And of course, I think the formal opposition, the DA, predominantly white party, so that he had to be taken to jail and expatriated to ICC. That's what he said. It was just a laughable one. But anyway, that aside, I think the geopolitical shift is already happening. And I think what we need to understand, what America had been working for, was a complete domination of the world. Yeah, that's what they call the unipolar world. Yeah. Now we talk about Blinken, Kamala Harris, and all those. Those are individuals. What we need to pay attention is the the economic and political elites behind. Yeah, that wants to see a reconfiguration of the world for the benefit of those who are in control of the American economy. So basically, what we are looking at the corporations, those big multinational corporations that want to benefit tremendously from this arrangement. And of course, there are variations within them as well. Some are now aligned with China because they tend to benefit strongly from China. But the oil industries are benefiting tremendously from the destruction of Russia and Russia's relation with Europe, because now they're selling gas and oil. Yeah, America just emerged as the biggest exporter of oil. So there are interests that guides all this. Yeah, despite the variation, but the domination of the world by the United States would facilitate that. An absolute domination of it, what they had been looking at. And that meant that then, if you willingly participate in that, great. If you don't, then you'll be demolished. The way Iraq was demolished, the way Libya was destroyed, the way Syria is being destroyed. To this day, they occupy an area of Syria illegally while they extract oil from that country. And as soon as Syria and forces allied to Syria hit back, then America gets furious, or they killed Americans. That's the kind of world America wanted, and that's what the kind of world America had been trying to build and envisaged this will last for the next 100 years. Yeah. So sitting in 1990, they thought this is going to be the American century altogether. Yeah. So the 2020s would be American century. So for 100 years, they were going to dominate the world. That's the kind of aspiration that they had. And the Chinese and the Russians knew all this, and they were slowly, without antagonizing them, trying to inch themselves away from this kind of domination. Not to dominate the world, but to move away from this kind of domination. So Putin's emergence was exactly that. And Xi's move, Chinese slow, cautious move into building its economy, slowly encroaching into expanding its influence in economic science everywhere, trying to build a belt and roads and transportation networks. It is to move away from America's dominance. The Belt and Road Initiative. It has nothing to do with other things or dominating the world. It's about getting resources to China safely, because if they corner China from the sea, it has no entrance. But if it has road infrastructures that facilitates movement of commodities that they desperately need, then it is a great thing for China. So it is within this context China and Russia started to move. India is also trying to do more or less the same. Now, they had been doing this over the last 15 years. And Americans and Europeans had been talking about the coming of the new Cold War already 10 years ago. I used to belong to strategic studies group back in 2008, 9, 10, and 11. And colonels and generals would come from the US, obviously a white man who was in the apartheid army, apartheid states army, who had networks all over. So he used to bring those individuals from the Netherlands, from Germany, from the US. They used to come and talk about, issues that are taking place in the global scale, the big picture, what they call it. And one colonel from the Netherlands, he was saying that people are talking about Cold War #2 is on the rise. He was already talking about this in 2008. Remember 2008, a very important date? Yeah. They had issues with Georgia immediately, with Russia. And then soon after that, they started the Ukraine-Russia issues. So it goes on. And then even Obama, he started to discuss pivot to Asia, remember? So all this was in the making over those long period of time. And Africa, I don't think they were paying attention to, but at least while Americans were very busy in the Middle East and elsewhere, Africans were forging relations with China, and like never before. Now, what does that mean for Africa? It means options, yeah, choices. That's what it means. You don't always have to go to Europe or North America. You can now go to China, and eventually also we could also go to India as well. Russia, yeah? So the birth of a multipolar world means for Africa, one, moving, being able to withstand American unilateral, this hegemony that America wanted, a bully of the world. avoiding that, and then being able to have choices. I can work on the gas with Russia. I can work on other mining with China, infrastructure development with China, industries, industrial parks with China, and education with India. Options, yeah, choices. And in a multilateral world, then there will be a balance. If there is a balance, then there will be less risk. Now, if America wants to dominate the world and is is suffering from this anxiety that it's losing the world, and its hegemony, that's a dangerous thing. So they will do something very reckless. So Africa need to prepare for that. They want to turn Africa into a site for their proxy war against China, and that doesn't uh, 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 bode well for African states. So they have to prepare for this. Yeah, what we have gone through in our region for the last 2 years, 3 years is exactly that. Remember, every senator or envoy that came to Addis was telling the Abiy's government that it needs to move away from China and Eritrea, of course, and because they see Eritrea as ever more moving away from America and going into the hands of China. But Eritrea had resisted all that, yeah. But despite that, that's the kind of impression. So this is the kind of conditions that we are likely to see more and more. Yeah. Now they're coming and intimidating us. Yeah, you have to democratize. You have to do human rights better, or the way we say you should do it. Yeah. So the bullying will continue, and then of course they have their armies all over Africa. So we probably are going to see more of those coups and subversion tactics, which they are good at. Americans are very good at. They have perfected it over some 60, 70 years by doing so in the banana republics in South America, changing governments everywhere. That's what they're good at. So they will continue to do that, in the continent. If you're not with us, then we are going to get rid of you. That's the kind of choice that they come up with. But at least with the Chinese and others, the likelihood that they would come, let's do business together so that we grow together. Yeah. Apparently, Kamala Harris said that in Ghana. Apparently, but it came out to mean that help us retain America's hegemony. That's the one thing, and help us get rich at your expenses. If it weren't that, we would have been happy to work with anybody. But it mustn't be at our expense. It mustn't be by destroying our states, by destroying our future. If they want to work with us, and we're more than happy, we're not against Americans or anybody. But they need to learn that they cannot bully us. They can come as a partners. We have riches, we have resources. And I think if we recognize our power, then will be in a better position. But I think many of us tend to forget that we have power, we have riches. Yeah, we tend to forget that. And they're scrambling for those riches. It's not because they like us that they smooching with our leaders. Yeah, it is because there are things that they want to control, and this part of the world. Okay, I think I spoke at length, and I leave it here. Thank you, Malet, and thank you, Kwame.
Thank you very much. I think in all we have taken an hour and almost an hour and a half. For me, those are the questions. Unless there is really some final words that can be said in 1 minute. That's it. Brother Binem has said something about Kamala Harris, the vice president's speech in Ghana. If you want to respond to that, I don't know, but it's a nice comment. What she's saying is basically, at your expense, get rich, and so Thank you for being here, and we will be back again on Thursday. Kwame, would you like to come in for some final words, or that's it for you?
Uh, thank you, Malet, and thank you, Biniam, for being on the program. I just want to encourage everyone who's watching to go out there and share this channel with as many people as possible, so that we can continue to spread this conversation. Because the purpose of these conversations are not for self gratification, but rather for us to seek freedom. We are seeking freedom for the African continent. So it's important when we fight for this freedom together as Africans. So the seeds of that freedom
It looks like, yeah,
Mm,
the very unstable internet
and-
Kwame is having today, but it's fine. He's coming back. Yes,
sorry, can you hear
yes,
me, Malik?
yes.
Yeah, so let me just add in that I was saying that the seeds of that freedom which we are looking for, you know, first of all, within us working together, and even in the smallest, smallest task that we have, just like having this conversation. They are bullying us on the continent and all over because the voices of us as Africans are not being heard. But when we come out like this and express ourselves as Africans, I think it is very important because the world gets to hear our view. Russia gets to hear our view. India gets to hear our view. China gets to hear our view. You know, the Arabs in the Middle East, they get to hear our view. So it's important that we, carry on these conversations, and they start with each of the people who are watching, sharing these conversations, so that they go out there and affect, the people that, they're supposed to. And we can all have confidence within ourselves that we can govern our continent, without the help, without lectures from anybody. We don't need lectures from anyone, for us to be able to govern our continent because we have come from a very low place.
Yeah, so it's fine with that. Yeah, thank you for those of you who have been here on and off. Thank you for watching, and yeah, please help us in sharing as much to your network. That will be really good. What we do is here we pick a topic, what's happening in the continent, and we discuss it from the Pan African point of view. That's always what we are trying to do. Yeah, thank you, brother Binam, again for being here, and yeah, have a good evening. Thank
so
you
thank you very
very
much.
much. On
Bye.
behalf of Kwame, I say, thank you and good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.